routing can feel complicated. I'm going to show you some static routing magic. Magic that simplifies static routing down to one command. But with great magic comes great responsibility. So I need you to promise me that you'll only use this method in the appropriate situations. And you look like a routing magician to me today who's ready to learn something new. Our magic is going to be conjured in the form of a static default route. You may be asking, what is a static default? Maybe that's what you're asking. I hope that's what you're asking. If it is, you're in the right place. You can think of a static default route like this. If your house is at the end of the street, like in this picture, there's only one way out of your neighborhood. You take that same road before you can go anywhere else in town. That's basically your default route. And that's exactly how a stub network works. There's only one way out of a stub network to reach the rest of the network. On a network that has only one way out, we can use a default route instead of filling the router with a bunch of instructions on how to get to another route. Because to access all other routes, packets have to go the same direction. When you have a network with only one way off the network, we call that network a stub network. In our packet tracer, we have two stub networks. Each of these stub networks has only one path for packets to travel off of their respective networks. Default routes are just a special case of static routing. Now that you've seen what a stub network is, let's actually configure the default route in Packet Tracer so these two routers know how to send packets off of the network. On my network here, I've already configured routing on the two middle routers. These two routers already have their routing configured. To configure static default routes on the two end routers for these stub networks, we're going to use two different methods. On router 1, over here on the left, I'm going to configure a static default route using a next hop address. And on router 4, all the way over here on the right, I'm going to use an exit interface. We're going to configure this static default route over here on router 1 using the next hop method. So enable conf t to get to global config mode, and then IP route. And we use a quad 0.0.0.0 space 0.0.0.0. And then we're using our next hop. Let's take a look. Our next hop is 10.0.0.2. So here we have 10.0.0.2. All right, let's take a look at our routing table now. Oops, we can't just do that. We can exit and do show IP route. Here we go. And here's our static route right here that we just configured. There's no other static routes in this router. We didn't have to go through all that trouble. We just set up our gateway of last resort by configuring our static default route. What this means to the router is that any destination that it doesn't know about is going to forward packets to the next hop router that we specified. Let's go ahead and give it a test. Like I said, routing is configured on my two routers in the middle. It's not configured down here on router 4, so I can go over to the 192.168.10.0 network. Let's give that a try. 192.168.10.3, I believe, is that's the IP address on the PC on that network. And there it is. We had an ARP here, of course, and then we got our reply. And if you've done my static routing lab, you're thinking, oh my gosh, I didn't have to plug in all of those individual routes on this stub network on the end. No, you did not, unless you're one of my students in class, and then you better have done it with static routes. I'll send it back to you and tell you to redo it. Sorry. Okay, so right here on the right, let's use a different method. This time we're going to use exit interface. Exit interface is going to look like it's easiest, but there are some situations where you should not use exit interface only. If you don't know, it's always safer to use, well, it isn't always safer. It would be safest to use the combination of the next hop and the exit interface. But yeah, I don't know. I think I'm going into too much detail here. Let's just look at the other method. I have another video on recursive lookups. You could watch that. You don't want to know about that here. You just want to see the other way to configure a static default route. Got to keep that in mind. You're not one of my captive students. I can't just yammer on forever. I've got to show you what you came here to see here on YouTube. Let's first of all just show IP route and verify. There's no static routes in here, so it's not going to work to get to any other networks. So, if this router receives a packet for any other network besides these two directly connected networks that are showing up in the routing table, it's just going to drop the packets. Now I need to know what my exit interface is here on router 2. Let's see on router 4. We're on router 4. I haven't even given it a name. My exit interface is serial 000. All right. So we're going to go into global config mode, and our command is IP route. And again, with the quad 0.0.0.0.0 for the subnet mask, also a quad 0, meaning any route. That's what it means. Any route. And then we're not going out a gigabit. We're going out a serial 000 interface. All right, we get a little warning here. That's okay. We are on a point-to-point link. If you want to learn more about this, just go and watch my video on recursive lookups. Yes, go and watch my video on recursive lookups if you don't, or if you want to know more about this, which you should. You should want to know more about this. Do show IP route. Here we are. Look at that. It's just saying send everything out serial 000. Our gateway of last resort is now set. We did not have to configure a bunch of static routes in there. Let's look at one of these routing tables here, just so you can see, in case you haven't seen. See, in these routers, you need to put the static routes in here because there's two directions out of these routers. They're not on a stub network. Now, it isn't always the case that to have a static default route, you need to be on a stub network. For instance, if we had the connection to the internet over here off of router 4 that I didn't name, then every router would point to the right here. So every router would have a default route that pointed to the right, which would be our internet connection over here, because you would assume that when a PC or another device is trying to reach a network that none of the routers have configured in their routing table, then that would be something that's out on the internet. So that's the direction. So you do use static default routes when you're not on a stub network, but it's definitely easy to get around typing in all of those static routing commands. Sort of magical. We're going to say it's magical to just be able to type in those quad zeros, either given an exit interface if you're on a serial point-to-point link, or given a next hop IP address. All right, if you watch this and you haven't seen my static routing lab, you might want to take a look at that and then come back here and learn all about default static routes again. It's very important that you learn static routing before you move on to dynamic routing protocols, which are fun and exciting. and you'll feel like a real wizard when you get to do OSPF. I hope that the magic of static default routes makes you feel like a winner, because you are a winner. Check back weekly for new CCNA videos, routing labs, and probably do some switching labs. Routing is a little bit harder than switching. I don't know. Definitely will put up some switching labs. I guess it's only harder if, when is it harder? Somebody's got to show you how to do this stuff, right? So then it's harder until somebody shows you how. So I'll get some switching labs put up as well. We'll create some VLANs and things like that. But if you're unclear about static routing, go ahead and check out some of my static routing videos and packet tracer labs. I do have a subnetting meets routing, static routes, and VLSM lab coming up. At the time of recording this, I haven't posted it yet, but it'll be up soon. Okay, if you want to see when that lab comes up, you should subscribe to my YouTube channel. That would be most excellent and very wizard-like of you. I hope you enjoyed this demonstration and lab of setting up a static default route. Have a great week. I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.